Hello and welcome to the channel. On today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you a detailed tutorial on how to draft and sew this Basque gown with a stylish yoke. So if it's your first time with my channel, please hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. So I've gone ahead to mark out all my basic measurement, which is my shoulder to bust, shoulder to underbust, shoulder to waist line. So for the top part, I'm going to stop at the waistline. So I'm going to mark my shoulder divided by 2 plus ½ inch because I'm attaching sleeve to the dress. So now I'm going to mark my basic neckline of 3 by 3 inches, but I'll be altering this pattern later. So now I'll come down by 1 inch at the shoulder, draw my shoulder slant, and I'm going to outline it. So the next step I'm going to take right now is to find my chest line, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. So go ahead to mark that. So now I'm going to be drawing a straight line at this point, and I'm going to rule out my chest line. So after ruling out my chest line, I'll divide it into 2. So now I'm going to be going in by ½ inch to draw my armhole curve, mark my bust circumference divided by 4, and I'm going to connect to my bust and take it up to the armhole. So after I'm done doing this, I'll just go ahead to outline. So now I'm going to be marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2, which is 3.5 inches. Go ahead to mark it at your chest line, bust line, under bust, and waistline. So after that, I'm going to go ahead to use my ruler and I'm going to connect, creating a straight line. So after I'm done doing that, the next step is to mark 1.5 inches upwards. You can use 2 inches. So that is where my yoke will be starting. So now I'll go ahead and extend back my nipple to nipple line at that point. Now go ahead to take your dart intake of 1 inch at your under bust and your waistline. For a plus size, you're going to use 1.5 inches. Go ahead to connect a straight line. Now you're going to place your French curve. Connect from your bust to your under bust and do that at the other side. So I'll go ahead to outline my pattern. So next I'll be marking a dart intake of 0.75 at both sides. So the reason why I'm doing this is that I don't want to have too much dart intake, so that by the time I draw out my yoke at that point, it won't be too curvy. I'll go ahead to connect the upper part, and now I'm going to draw a straight line. So now is to take my measurements. I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake and replace it, and I'll go ahead to mark my sewing allowance at the under bust, at the bust line. Whatever I have at the chest line, I'll take it down there. At the under bust, mark your under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake and add your sewing allowance. Do the same for your waistline. Mark your waist circumference, measure the dart intake and also add your sewing allowance. So next I'll just go ahead to connect my pattern. So connect from your chest line down to your bust line, to your under bust and waistline. So next step I'm going to take right now is this 0.75 dart intake I took at both sides, making it 1.5. I'm going to extend it outwards and I'm going to replace that dart. Go ahead and reconnect your armhole. So now this is my new armhole and I'm going to use my marker to apply my pattern so that it's going to be visible. So now after I'm done doing this, we're going to go ahead to work on the yoke. So I'll be coming in by ½ inch on this part, and from the shoulder line I'm going to come in by 2.5 inches. So from there I'm going to go ahead to connect it down to the center of the pattern. So from here I'll come in by 2 inches and I'm going to divide what I have at this point into 2. So I'll be going up at this part, or you can as well measure from your shoulder. So from my shoulder, I'm going to come down by 3.5 inches, and I'm going to place my French cuff to connect to that part and then connect to the other side. So what I had was not really okay, so I just went ahead to extend it upwards because what we have there is a bit curvy. So after outlining, the next step is just to go ahead to outline and make my pattern very visible for you to see. So if you have any question regarding this particular tutorial, please don't forget to leave your question at the comment section. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. So I'm just going to go ahead to outline my pattern and write this part as yoke. So the next step is to go ahead to cut out my dress pattern. So after cutting my pattern, this is what I have, and if you merge it together, that part, and you will notice that it's going to fit properly. Moving over to the back, so I have a back pattern and I'll be making use of this back pattern. So the only difference is that when we're going to be sewing the dress, I'm going to go ahead to alter the neckline, because the neckline we have in front at the upper part, at the shoulder part, we came in by 2.5 inches. So while cutting my pattern, I'm going to go ahead to do that. So in case you don't know how to cut out a basic bodice or for the back, you can go ahead and check my previous videos or my other videos where I drafted out a back pattern. So after cutting it out, this is what we are going to have. So remember, just like I said, we are going to alter the neckline. So it's only the neckline that we are going to alter. Every other thing is going to be the same. So after you're done drafting out, you're going to alter the yoke of the back. So to alter it, you're going to measure 2.5 inches starting from this point, just like we did for the front pattern, and you're going to connect it to the lower part of the yoke. So when cutting out my pattern, I'm going to place my pattern on my material and I'm going to cut out. So now moving over to the lower part of my skirt, so which is my skirt part, I'm going to be using this drafting paper, and I'm going to be using the top part as my waistline. So from here, I'm going to mark 7 inches for my hip. For a much taller person, go ahead to use 8 inches. So after marking out my hip point, the next step you want to take is to insert your waist measurement at the upper part. So whenever I'm sewing a bustier or a corset, I don't add that to my skirt. So I'm going to mark my waist circumference divided by 4. Go ahead and measure, go ahead and add your sewing allowance. So I'm going to mark my hip circumference and add my sewing allowance. So the next thing is I'm going to connect it this way. So now if you notice that the pattern at the skirt, at the one side of the skirt, did not touch the hip, so I'm going to go ahead to mark 4 inches from here. So if you're much taller, please go ahead to use 5 inches. So now I'm going to be marking the length of my basque. So I'm going to be using 9 inches and I'll be adding half. So 9 to 10 inches is okay. So why I'm using 9 inches is because I'm not that tall. So for a tall person, 10 inches should be okay for your basque. But if you want your gown to be much longer, you can use 12 inches, because the longer your basque, the longer your dress will be at the center. So now for the ruffle or the pleated part of the skirt, we're actually going to cut it out when we're sewing the dress. So now the total length of my dress, I might be using around 35 inches because I don't want it to be too tall. So for the back length of the skirt, for the back part of the skirt, you're going to add your zipper allowance to it. So now I went ahead to add extra zipper allowance to this pattern. So when I'm cutting the front part, I'm just going to fold it up this way, and this is my front pattern. So if I want to cut out the back pattern, I'm going to go ahead to open up that zipper allowance I attached to it. So with this, I'll just be using one pattern to cut it out.